that most of us are overlooking. Brands are missing out. And today we're with Joshua Molina, who's the president of Palabra Media. He's based here in Phoenix, and he serves Toyota dealerships, all kinds of brands that want to reach the Hispanic market. And he's sharing some insights with us on how he's executing for companies that want to be able to reach that, working with other agencies, working with the brands to get that done. He's also the MC here.
That's right.
At DigiMarCon, and we are live here at DigiMarCon Phoenix. Joshua, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Like you mentioned, I've enjoyed being the MC today and getting to know a lot of the different speakers like yourself.
Yeah. So tell us, let's say that we have a brand manager that they are looking to, they know they've got to reach the Hispanic market. They already have an agency who does most of their media buying and design and creative and website and whatever, but they know they need a specialist like you guys. How would they work with someone like you? What do you guys do? How does that fit in with what they're already doing with their marketing program?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And, we work very well, both as, an agency of record, but more importantly, working with a lot of brands that have done everything, have a general market agency of record. They have an in-house marketing team, but are lacking that authentic outreach to the Hispanic community. Because as you said, nationwide, 4.4 trillion, if the Hispanic market in the US were its own economy, it'd be the fourth largest GDP in the world. So, we're talking a huge swath of growth for companies that maybe are saturated in their market, and they're like, where can I grow? What channels can I use? You don't have to go to a different channel. You just go to a different audience that you might be overlooking.
So Joshua, what are some interesting things that you're noticing right now in the market?
Yeah. So one of the things we're noticing right now in the market is a lot of general market brands in the general market are spending quite a bit on TV, on radio, on a lot of different things, but they're not doing so much in the Spanish market. So Univision, Telemundo, the radio stations, they are a great way to reach out to this market. When you do so, you definitely want to work with an agency like us to create the creative, the messaging, the commercials, the radio spots. And so we do work with several agencies that subcontract us because they don't have any specialists in-house. They want to do it authentically, and that's what we bring.
So when a marketing department of the brand is coming up with their Q4, Black Friday campaigns, retail strategy, do they come up with their kind of brand strategy and then figure out kind of what the Hispanic angle is, or do they need to do something that's separate for Hispanic?
So, you can do it in a few different ways. I definitely would recommend focusing on an integrated approach where whatever special you're doing or whatever promotion you're doing has an element of multicultural in it. But at the same time, we definitely recommend not just translating a promotion, not even transcreating, but you want to make sure that whatever you create is authentic and is, we were talking to a dental brand the other day, and, we were trying to figure out, hey, how do we get more Latinos to use your product? And we thought of a few things. One thing is, especially here in Arizona, a lot of people go to Mexico. We're a border town of Mexico to get a lot of the dental work done. So how do you convince this group to, be able to stay within the U.S., to be able to use dental insurance, to be able to use these different things to, instead of going,
it's issue specific.
It is issue
not
specific.
Just based on a calendar campaign.
Exactly. And you have to understand their behaviors because not all demographics behave the same way.
Wow. That is clever. I've seen that across folks that we worked with, that it's because there's less competition, like you said, and it's more specialized, and you need an approach like Palabra Media, that the cost of acquisition is also cheaper because the traffic is cheaper because there's less competition. Unless there's actually, of course you want to be multicultural and inclusive, but there's actually an ROI advantage too.
There's a huge ROI advantage. As you mentioned, the cost per customer can be cheaper. It depends on the campaign. But also, I think the reason for that is the market saturation. We have a client in the legal space. So, there is oversaturation when it comes to personal injury, for example. But in the Spanish language or Hispanic market, you have a greater opportunity because it's not as saturated.
Hmm. So Joshua, how has your background as a journalist impacted your role now as the president of a media agency? You're kind of now on the other side.
Right, I'm on the other side. So, I would say on two ends. One is we focus on storytelling. So all marketing, I really feel, is you have to tell the right story, the right messaging. So being able to take that from the journalism side to the marketing side works really well. But the other part is we also do PR, so earned media, and we do very creative paid media campaigns. It's not just the same retargeting, over the air ads. We work with our brands to create some very, very creative, very strategic campaigns as well.
So for a brand manager that wants to dip their toe in the water for Hispanic marketing, how should they be thinking about? Should they carve out part of their budget? Should they have like a test campaign? Should they go to the media planner and say, here, let's size the market? What's the best way to be able to prove that this works?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always recommend testing, no matter what new type of marketing you're going to do, a new channel, a new type of a media opportunity. But when it comes to Hispanic, it's proven. And for a lot of people, they will just spend a little bit of money and say, oh, that didn't work, so I'm never going to do Hispanic again. You definitely want to make sure that you carve out enough of a budget over a long enough period of time to see the effectiveness and to pass there's going to be an up ramp. Once you pass that up ramp and really level up, there's a huge opportunity there.
So we see a lot of brands, they'll just take their English creative and translate. They'll translate their web pages and they'll just call it done.
Right.
And you talked about being authentic. What are some of the mistakes that you see or nuances there that these guys are not accounting for?
Yeah, I mean, we work with a client who we have a commercial that they've spent a lot of money on, and we were asked to translate it. And as we're translating it, we found a lot of different things that just don't work in Spanish. So we actually had to make some changes. What we recommend further than that is, if you really want to impact the community, create specific campaigns that just resonate. And so one of the things we did is make sure the music, we had certain choice of the music. So we chose the voiceover people, not necessarily to match the English voiceover, but to be able to create that nuance and understand the specific market. And then, there's different pieces, even, trying to translate something like, hey, we're working with this specific part of the car or the vehicle. That might not make sense in Spanish. We don't even have a word for it because we don't refer to it as much. So there's a lot of different nuances for that.
And so we know if we take Hispanic and then we break that down into like the Miami Cuban Hispanic or Mexico or other Central America, or even like Brazil where it's Portuguese, but there's different flavors of Portuguese as well. How do you account for all those different variations?
Yeah, I think all marketing really should be local. So when we think about it, in Arizona, we have a very Mexican presence because we're a border town. So there's a lot of that influence. Like you said, Miami, it's going to be very different. Cuban, Puerto Rican, when you're in New York. So I'm from the East Coast and from New Jersey. So, very Central American, also Caribbean feel. So whoever translates, whoever does the voiceover, whoever creates the scripts has to be able to understand those. If you're doing more of a national campaign, I would recommend a combination of those. We're looking at the Super Bowl, and Bad Bunny being a Puerto Rican, performer, he brought all the flags into it, and that's something you want to be. You don't want to just be, area specific. You want to bring in a national campaign, bring as much of the flavor as possible.
So Joshua, what's your viewpoint on hiring influencers that are Hispanic? Because a lot of brands, for any niche, we're just going to find an influencer and they're going to make our commercials and we're going to repurpose their content.
Yeah, I definitely recommend having an influencer strategy. I think it's really important. We work with influencers. The brands we work with have a certain influencer strategy. But to the second part of your question, I definitely don't recommend just having an influencer create all the content for you, because there are specific nuances that you have to understand by somebody like, for example, us as an agency. We have a whole dedicated team that have different aspects of it, everything from the media relations to the creative to the copywriting. And so we have more of a 360 approach than somebody would just kind of directing the internal team.
the strategy, even scripting components, so it fits in a
All of it.
multimedia version versus them just like making up stuff, authentic,
Absolutely.
like UGC content.
And having some
Yeah.
metrics, having some something to show, and also something to track
Yeah.
and make sure that what you're doing is effective.
Yeah. Give us your best case study.
Best case study. Okay. I would say we worked with, one of our first clients is a Hallmark franchise. So we worked with 25 different Hallmark stores plus an e-commerce store. They started in a very kind of mom and pop feel to what they were doing. We came in, we standardized processes, we created a new brand guideline, helped them go from this very mom and pop feel to a national unified presence. And they're now a $27 million brand that continues to grow.
So they had an AOR that you had to work with.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then they also had to adhere with Hallmark corporate and under their brand guidelines. So you had to operate within a complex organizational structure.
When you work with franchises, there's always that complexity. But at the same time, one of the things we were trying to do with them is differentiate them. So we went from from having a Hallmark branding to having more of an individual branding that we can use to go beyond the Hallmark franchise.
So 25 retail Hallmark stores. How did you address that? That's such an interesting challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's also regional. They weren't all in Arizona. We had stores in Texas, New Mexico, Michigan. So there is a difference in the way that you message things, the way you word things, and also even on the marketing ops side, how do you address emails when there are different promotions, different pieces. So, I think that's why working with an agency versus working with an influencer or somebody else, you have that process in place, you have the tools, and you have the personnel to do it.
And the experience and having learned from executing across a larger footprint.
Absolutely.
What were some things that were surprising to you when you executed that Hallmark campaign across these 25 stores in e-com?
Yeah, one of the interesting things you learn is for an advantage and a disadvantage. I would say an advantage is, not all promotions will work in every single location, but since you have such a large swath, some of the ones that have maybe some lower revenue, the ones that have the high revenue brings up, the tide for the rest of it. So you do have success, even if you have a couple stores that aren't as successful. In the end, you have a success overall as a brand.
That is absolutely awesome. So Joshua Molina of Palabra Media, so fantastic, here at DigiMarCon Phoenix, live on the blog. And you're seeing this on, let us know, are you seeing it on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, or on X? Love to hear, what do you think? Got any questions for Josh? Oh yeah, we're live streaming to multiple places here.
That's right.
Yeah, Instagram's on there too. How do people find you?
Yeah, they can find us on any of those channels at Palabra Media, or myself at Zero to CMO on Instagram. I have a podcast as well, Zero to CMO podcast. So, but follow us at Palabra Media on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and on Facebook as well.
Fantastic. Last question for Joshua. Yeah. Why should people come to DigiMarCon?
Why should people come to DigiMarCon? The great thing about DigiMarCon is it really brings a lot of local talent, a lot of local marketers. We had the privilege of having people from outside of Arizona, but really there's a real local network that comes together, and we're able to learn from each other, to network with each other, pass some references, and just kind of become friends.
Yeah, and you get to meet people like Joshua or me and other folks here just at lunchtime. I got to meet all kinds of cool people and ask them questions and learn from them. And, you could watch YouTube videos or you could scroll on social media like you're doing now. But for those of us who are wanting to be pro or really know what we're doing, there's no substitute, even though there's all this AI stuff.
Sure.
There's no substitute from meeting people in person. And I see like there's this backlash from all this whatever AI stuff to just actually meeting people face to face. So I hope to see you guys at one of the next DigiMarCons.
Awesome.
All right.